मैं रिकॉर्ड कर So very good evening to every viewer. Me with my partner Arshit Kumar Singh from Christ University, become strategic finances here for brief entrepreneurship internal assessment with regards to interviewing an entrepreneur. So today we have Mr. Neelam Srivastav, founder and CEO of Notnal Lucknow, which is the one of the most emerging startups in the our country. Basically, Notnal has been receiving the various kinds of award from state ministry to various publications such as Aryan. So we have Mr. Neelam Srivastav. So starting with Neelam sir, can you give your brief introduction? Who are you? What was your schooling and basic backgrounds? And how do you emerge with this startup idea?
Okay. So first of all, thank you to everyone, to the university for inviting me for this discussion. It is a privilege to talk about my idea in front of the viewers as well as for the university, the very prestigious university in Bangalore. So, okay, giving my introduction about this idea, about myself, and then about this idea. I was basically an engineer. I'm basically an engineer. I did my BTech from JP Institute of Information Technology in Noida. Just before finishing the BTech, I got a placement opportunity in Satyam. Nowadays, it is Mahindra, Tech Mahindra. But previously, during those days, it was Satyam Computer. So I got a placement in Satyam Computers. I worked in Hyderabad for almost 3 years in different capacities in IT industry. Thereafter, I went for my MBA. I did my MBA from Schulich School of Business, Toronto. And then I was working in Canada, Toronto for a brief period of a few months before deciding that it is time to quit the job and look out for entrepreneurship. So yeah, that is how I quit my job, came back to India, started up my own venture, and then everything fall in place. About this idea, not null, and how this idea emerged in my mind, and how we thought about it. While I was studying in Canada, Toronto, I realized that they had huge resources of ebooks for the university students. Uh, just because it is midnight or late in the night, and in Toronto, when it is a winter, it is actually real winter, -20 degree, -30 degree. So going out to library at that midnight hours is it's really difficult. So they had a good resources of ebooks with them, and which through for which you can log in through their portal, read those all those books, and complete your assignments, complete your tasks. It's important part of the MBA process. So I realized that it is a very good idea when midnight in the mid of the night, when you cannot go to the libraries, or and you have the need to look into those books. So I decided that okay, it's if we can do the similar things in India, it will be really great to go ahead with that. But I realized that going with engineering or management or any other subjects is it's really difficult, because a lot of American startups or European startups has already done it. And in India, generally, what we read in management, probably what you know about it, or what we have learned, learning in engineering, all those concepts, all those materials are coming from the West. We are not creating anything from our own side, merely copying most of this stuff, or changing to the Indian mindsets. That's all we are doing. So we thought, okay, let's look into the Hindi literature or literature part, just because no one has entered into this field. And if we can enter into the literature field, it will create a better or bigger market for every one of us, for the universities students as well as for our company. So that is how the idea evolved. We went into the ebooks. And before finishing up this question, just wanted to know about it. Probably you might have known, but to all the viewers, the idea is not solely mine. Me and my wife both started up this idea when we decided to marry, and it was arranged marriage, not a love marriage. But when we decided to marry, we discussed that I'm going to quit the company, starting up my own venture. My wife at the same time decided that okay, let's quit the company. She also decided to quit the company, and then both of us decided to start up their own this not null.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. It's been such a huge pleasure to have you also, and mainly know this kind of ideas, because most of people used to rely on jobs because it provides some kind of security to us. But making that bold move is like creating all your company and your venture, and basically your field.
Uh,
So next question will be
yeah.
asked by Harshit. He's our partner. He's from Hyderabad. Harshit, you can go on.
Okay.
Good evening, sir. It's such a pleasure
Good.
to meet you. So,
Same
after
here.
listening to your exciting startup, so just I'm curious to know about what are your future prospects of this startup.
Okay. So when we thought about this idea, we realized that the Hindi literature is not even online. It is still, it was, back in 2015, when we thought about this idea, it was still being distributed in paper and hardback copies. And, sitting in Bangalore and Hyderabad, you would realize that it is difficult if you want to read Hindi literature books or literary books. It is really difficult to have them accessible at, every nook and corner or in Hyderabad or in Bangalore, like cities. Probably there are very few places in Hyderabad and Bangalore where you can find Hindi literary books. So, and they were not even online. So we thought, okay, if we can create that kind of market where anyone who has interest in the literature can read it online, it will be a great idea to serve them on the mobile platforms. And people were transforming to the mobile, smartphones, to the laptops, to iPads. So it was a nice idea to think about it in 2015. Secondly, we also realized that the universities wanted to have even e-resources for literature stuff, but it was not even available. No, none of the startups were looking into this space. So we thought if we can make an early move, it will be really important and beneficial for us. So that is how the idea evolved in our mind. We started off with Hindi literature. Nowadays, we are working with different other languages, for example, Kannada, Urdu, Punjabi, Marathi. These are the languages we are working with apart from Hindi. So nowadays we are looking into creating a bigger market and making it deeper into different languages, and ensuring that the universities or even readers can get access to those literary stuffs very easily on their smartphones, iPads, or any other electronic devices. So that is how the idea evolved, and that is how it is shaping up right now.
Okay,
Wow,
thank you.
sir. It's
Okay.
such a smart
Yeah.
move by your startup. I'm really impressed. And now everyone
Thank you.
should ask the next question to you, sir.
Okay, so most of us are from like middle class backgrounds. We often, I tell you, like feel that job is one of the securities and basically government job. So what were the initial hurdles that were faced by you, your company, and eventually your wife, which is also one of the co-founder of Nordmal? And so these are hurdles including everything, basically from like starting from the capital formation to making connection to colleges, even the political environment that is one of the most important, because you need to get some approve rights from from royalties when you're in like book departments, your legal environment, your like regulate your social environment, how people are gonna adopt these changes, because most of us are like still relying on like hard books only, because most of us feel like we have something on our hand that would be like much better than something getting on the phone. Still the mindset is towards
Right.
that, and eventually to most of the like technological environment, how you guys are like putting up like new technologies into like your business, and how you are like evolving to change the mindset of the people, like no more we gonna rely on pages, more we gonna rely on technology, let's use it.
Okay. So yeah, of course there were a lot of hurdles, and when you start up something, you got to face those hurdles. Otherwise, there is some problem with your ideas. That is not my line, but everyone, everyone into the entrepreneurship talks about this. If you are not facing any hurdles, probably you are on the wrong path. So of course, even I faced a lot of hurdles when we started off. Uh, the best part of it was the family members were adopted this idea very quickly. They never made us, they never created a difficult situation for us to go ahead with this idea. Parents, my parents and my wife's parents, they actually helped us or motivated us at different times to ensure that we are not falling apart with this idea. So that was the best part, that family hooked together to ensure that we are not demotivated with this idea. The other part was initially, of course, to make the technology work about it. The ebook was not so prevalent in literary field. The fonts of Hindi or Kannada or Urdu or whatsoever is not so frequently used for the technical purpose. So making an ebook out of those fonts which were not really useful for on the technology platform, how to make a technology out of it was a very big challenge. It is still one of the biggest challenge if I talk about the technology, just because when youth work with authors in Hindi or literary field, they are either writing on their hand, they just write it on the paper, or if they have moved on to the laptop, it is different kind of language fonts that they use. These fonts create a lot of problems when we go ahead with the technology. So optimizing those fonts for the electronic devices was the biggest challenge that I faced initially. When we achieved some good results and we moved on, of course, the next kind of challenges was to make people read these ebooks. Just as you said, we were habitual to read the books, on our hand, taking the books in a printed format, making things work in an electronic devices which we are not used to it. Probably next generation which is going to bond with the smartphones will be very, very conversant with this technology, but we were not so useful with this, just because when we were growing up we had books in our hand. So suddenly if you want me to change to electronic devices, it makes everyone's life difficult to read through those ebooks. So that was the biggest one. Second challenge, making reader read through those ebooks, and making them understand about this whole environment, shifting them was the biggest challenge. Lastly, if you talk about the challenge, I would say a political side, I didn't face much challenges, just because once the company was set up, the rules and regulation was set up, there was not a big challenge coming up from the political side, as you mentioned. The last challenge was starting up something from a city called Lucknow, where you don't get so much of good resources. When I say resources, it means human resources. Human resources is it was a bit difficult for us to get in UP, particularly in Lucknow, just because the cream of the talent moves to Bangalore, to Hyderabad, to Mumbai, these kind of cities, but they don't stay in Lucknow. So getting them in Lucknow, making them work with the technology, making them work with the marketing or content management was a difficult challenge, and it is still one of the biggest challenge where we still face these days. But probably once we talk about the pandemic, people post pandemic people have started understanding that working from home could be a good option. Everyone is looking to work from home, they're comfortably working from home. So post pandemic things have improved for us, just because we can hire resources from different parts of India without any problem. They can work from many locations, say Hyderabad, the Bangalore, or Delhi. It is not that previously they cannot do it, but they were even the people or students like for you were not so interested in working from home. They realized that okay, it is not a serious job to work from home. Nowadays, when post pandemic, post corona, it is that people have realized that okay, this is one of the ways to look into the future. It is not something that you're sitting at home and you're wasting your time or talent all about that. So now things are changing quickly. People have moved on to ebooks. People have moved on to working from different locations, even working in the offline segment. So these are the challenges where we initially faced, but things have improved so on.
Okay, thank you
Oh,
so much, sir,
thank
for
you
your
so
again
much, sir, for
your
that.
inputs.
And just I wanted to know that, as we all know that this COVID has impacted so many startups, and some of them boomed, some of them failed. So how has this COVID impacted your business, sir? Your startup, sir? Sorry, sir.
Very frankly, when I talk about this COVID impact, I was, or we were lucky that it created a positive impact for our company, just because post pandemic, as I was mentioning earlier, people have realized that things could be in a lockdown phase, and when it is a lockdown phase, you cannot go to the library, you cannot purchase books or printed books from Amazon or Flipkart or any other sellers and local sellers as well. So they started moving to the online resources. Probably you guys have moved on in MBA, but when you talk about literature, people have not moved on so easily. So post pandemic, or during the pandemic, it was good for us that the business started growing. People were realizing that ebooks could be the future if we can make ourselves conversant with the ebook. If we can make ourselves aware with the technology, it will be helpful for us going into the future. So initially, I would say it was a supplement or a complementary things. If you don't get the printed books, probably you'll move on to the ebooks. But nowadays, it is something like supplementary. You got to have the ebooks with you. You got to have probably laptop or smartphones or tablets so that you can read those ebooks on your devices without any issues. Previously, it was not the case. So if I talk about B2C consumer market, people have realized that this is the future, and let's get conversant, or let's make ourselves comfortable with the technology. So in that case, I would say yes, we are lucky to have pandemic of course created a lot of issues on this side, but lucky that we fall into the other side where the market disrupted positively for us. The market was disrupted by the pandemic, but it was on a positive side for us. On the For the universities also, they realized that going into the future, the e-library is the way out, and they themselves are now looking out for contents like e-contents in Hindi literature or Urdu literature or Kannada literature. So for us, in a wholesale market, summarizing in every aspects, it has been very fruitful for us. So disruption sometimes creates a lot of new opportunities, and for us, it is created.
Okay, so just I wanted to mention that you are like engaging this Swadesh thing, like in your e-learning platform, you're engaging Swadesh thing, like different languages you are adding. I am very impressed with that, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we are creating different languages. We're bringing different languages on a single platform, especially with literature part.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
it's not that we are looking into every other segments, or but we are looking into the literature of different languages.
Okay.
So, sir, obviously it has always been said that a gradual process of improvement should never stop into a person. After you achieve something, if your company is say 100 billion, then you should have a target to make it 1 trillion. So what will be like the future prospects of Not Null? If I ask you like 1 year or 5 years down the line, where you see Not Null?
Okay, so good question. Probably if you would asked in 2019, I would have said that the difficult phase is still going on. We are still trying to make people understand with this technology, make people familiar with the technology. But say in last 2 years, it has changed a lot and lot. So looking into future, probably 1 or 2 years down the line, just because pandemic has made us start at least one thing, that don't look too much into the future. And when you look too much into the future, probably you will be lost. So one thing that I personally on my side have started thinking about it, let's not look into 5 years. That was the basic question when you go out for an interview and for a job. Then they ask you about how do you see yourself 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line. But if nowadays, if I have to sit to take an interview, I would never ask this question, just because pandemic has taught us to not look into deeper into the future. Let's talk about 1 year, 2 years. Probably that's enough to think about it. 2 years down the line, I would say yes. We want to have more and more languages on our platform, more and more quality of ebooks on our platform. Just because working with 3-4 languages, we cannot stop from here on. We are now a trusted brand for a lot of universities, for a lot of people who read literature in different languages. So we want to create that kind of synergy in different languages where we are adding values. We are bringing a lot of great literature online. We are digitizing a lot of other literatures, old literatures. When I say old literatures, we are saying that literature in 1800, 1900 that they were written, and nowadays people cannot have access to those literature. So if we can digitize those literature, bring it online in a new format, it will be helpful for readers to see or read what were written in 1800 or 1900 centuries. So that is something which is primary on our agenda. uh, Post pandemic, what we are seeing as of now is globally there are a lot of improvements happening in ebooks. So a lot of technology is being made, the changes are being made. So we want to adopt those technologies to make and to ensure that we are not falling behind what is being developed all over the world. Or probably we should be leaders in something. We are creating the ebook technologies and others are going to adapt it. That is where I would love to see ourselves 2 years down the line, and nothing more than that as of now. As I said, I have stopped looking deeper into the future. Let's take bits and pieces and then bring together and create a future for 5 years or 10 years down the line.
It's been such a great to know that now we are like living into the present. This is something like basically everyone used to ask like 5 years down the line when you are
Yes.
standing or eventually your business would be standing, and that's something input like I'm gonna like carry on to my whole life. So basically, sir, one more input that we wanna know, that first guy who started a business is the entrepreneur. And then after guys, after everyone now started following a successful business, he would be probably the business guys. So, sir, how you gonna like compete with your competitors? Because in today's environment, if I feel competitors are like everywhere, and eventually, how you're gonna like target your customers also. That's something very important.
Okay. Very frankly, there is a book, very famous book. If you haven't read as a part of your MBA course, I would really mention to you guys as well as to all viewers who are listening to me. There's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy uh, that is written from a university in France, and it is one of the it's very wonderful book. What it says that instead of creating a red ocean of competitors and killing the competition, ensuring that you stays on, you are the in a better shape to compete with others. It's better to create a blue ocean where you're working synergically with other startups, other even your competitors, and creating kind of a ocean where
Core
everyone can
competencies
survive.
like
Yes. So yeah, I would say we are kind of thinking on the same line. If you look out the Indian market, even if we say that 50-60% is the illiteracy rate in India. Sorry. It's okay. Okay.
sorry for the interruption.
So
Neelam sir has like lose his connection. Now he's back with us. Let's start, sir.
yeah, it's one of the other part of the technology when you're
Yes,
working
sir.
offline, or working in different places. There are issues with the technology as well. So anyway, 1 second. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So uh-huh. What is the issue? Okay, we were talking about the competition. So we are kind of creating a blue ocean. If you think about the literacy rate in India at 50-60% with crores of population, even 50-60% is we are talking about the literacy rate. And if we target those number of audience, it's a huge market. And probably one or two odd startups cannot cover this entire market. It got to have more and more startups to ensure that people are reading it, and getting people to read a lot of good books is a good habit. And if we are not able to create it, or someone else should create it, and we have to work synergically together to ensure that we are actually motivating people to read those books. People have stopped, at least in North India, what we have seen, people have stopped the habit of reading it. They don't read books quite often. When I was a kid, probably 2 to 3 books a month was at least the basic minimum that we were reading. But it is not the case with the students as of now. They do not read a lot of books in during their best time. So what we want to create is to motivate people, to motivate students, to motivate the young generation to read books quite often. And for that, one or two startups cannot do that. It got to have a chain of startups, a lot of startups working in those sector where we are keep on bringing the great books, working with a lot of better authors. So I don't see much challenge with competition as of now. especially when in our field when literature is not literary startups, ebook startups are not even there. So we want to have more and more startups in this field, so that people are motivated to read, at least that are transformed to read it online. That is one another phase of it. Reading is just not the way for us. Reading it online is beneficial for us. So if there are startups who can motivate people to read on their smartphones, to read on their tablets or laptop, it would create a kind of a culture where reading is happening on a constant basis, and we are also part of it. Then for us, the cake will be large, and we will be a part of a larger pie of the cake. So I don't see any challenge with the competition. If you really want to know about it, the Amazon Kindle is there, the Google Books are there. So they kind of create a competition, but I don't face any competition or any heat from them as of now. They are covering another part of the market where English literature or English books are very prevalent in the society. But if we talk about the Indian languages, they are not covering so much into it. So that is where we are bringing up something different from our competition, those who are working in the ebook sector.
Okay, so any inputs from Harshit side?
Sir,
Yeah.
meeting people like you, interacting with you, it's been such an inspirational journey. And sir, there are so many young minds in the market, like they want to start their own startup. So what is your advice to them, sir?
Okay. See, as I said earlier, starting up something, it takes a lot of hurdles to overcome. So you got to be very patient when you're starting up your own venture. Starting, these days startups are in fashion, but what we are seeing or what we have seen so far is that people are, they want to just make the money very quickly. The valuation goes to 1 crore to 10 crores to 500 crore, something like that. They want to make it happen in a year of two. But it is not the case with the actual startups. You have to invest your time. You have got to be very patient when starting up something, because things will definitely fall apart. Sometimes you'll feel that it's not working at all. And if you are feeling it, it's not the case that it is falling apart. It is just that you have to rethink on every day if your model is working right or wrong, if your people are ready to adapt to those changes which you are bringing up or not. These kind of answers that you need to have every day in your life. And startup, when I started up something, me and my wife had discussions almost every night. Are we on a right path? Are we sure that we would be able to make money out of this? It's not that people won't even buy an ebook. Universities won't even see any better options going with not null. So these kind of answers we are giving to ourselves on a regular basis. What has happened today, and how do we see a week from here on, a month from here on? So you got to answer yourself very honestly. Don't let yourself into a fool's paradise where you feel that you're next Bill Gates or your next Steve Jobs. It is not that easy to be next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. Think about 1 week, 1 day, 1 month, how you have been doing in last 1 month, and where can you take your company or your startup in next 1 month. Stay, got to have patience first of all, just because things might not work initially, or even if you start initially on a wonderful pace, it might slow down after a year or so. So think about it, give constant brainstorming about each and everything, and then probably 2 to 3 years, 5 years down the line, you'll see your startup in a better position. When I was in Canada, there was a saying about the startups in Silicon Valley in Canada that a startup at least takes 4 to 5 years to become something important for the people to realize that it is actually creating values to the society. So don't think about too much. Think about 1 year you want to make 100 crores or 1 crore or 2 crore, and just would be next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Ratan Tata. It takes time to do that if you're a first generation entrepreneur, at least.
Okay, so from this now we are like ending our interview on a very happy pace. We have like completed all the
Okay.
sorts of questions. So we are like very thankful to Mr. Neelam Srivastav for getting his time through, because we know that creating a company would require even blood, sweat, tears, everything from like making it out. And eventually have given you like such a wonderful time for teaching more generation. Eventually for us also, it's been like a teaching, like how you have like dropped from your MBA, because as usual, I say most of people believe in job security. Even I believe. So this has been such an important, such an roller coaster ride for you. And we wish that your company Notmail will be growing in eventually in many years. Eventually, not in many years. This year only 2022. It will be like very close. You're getting like crores of
Thank you.
position. From this is how we are ending. Just a thank you note for like Mr. Rishikesh sir, our assistant professor, Price deemed to be University, for giving us such a wonderful chance to like interview and through this internal assessment, and we look forward to a more challenging and like more learning outcomes to other assessments also. From this year, we are like,
Okay.
okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Mr.
All the best.
Thank you so much,
All
sir.
the
Thank you,
best.
sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
It's
bye.
been a pleasure.